person convicted of those things is simply too dangerous to ever be free. Accordingly, Ms. Richins, based on your conviction on count 1, first-degree felony aggravated murder, the court hereby sentences you to life without parole.
Wait for a second. If someone told you they thought their spouse was poisoning them, would you believe him? Because Eric Richins told people. Not once, not in a single moment of panic. He told his family. He told his friends. He looked at the people who knew him best and said the words out loud. If I die, look at her. He said it like a man who had already done the math, like someone who understood exactly what was happening inside his own house and had run out of ways to stop it. People heard him. People nodded. And nobody moved fast enough. On March 4th, 2022, Eric Richins was found dead in his Park City, Utah home. He was 39 years old. His 3 sons, 9, 7, and 5, were asleep in the same house. The medical examiner's report was not ambiguous. 5 times the lethal dose of fentanyl, taken orally. No prior drug history, no prescription, no accident. It took 4 years to prove what Eric already knew. This is that 4 years. On June 15th, 2013, Kouri and Eric Richins got married in Utah. Eric ran a stonemasonry business, C&E Stonemasonry. He was a tradesman, hands-on, the kind of man who built things from the ground up. He was devoted to his work and, above everything else, to his 3 sons. People who knew him described a man who showed up for his kids, for his business, for his community. Kouri worked in real estate. She flipped houses, moved, changed everything. His business, his equipment, his vehicles, all of it would transfer differently under a different legal framework. That distinction mattered. The prosecution would later argue it mattered enormously. And then, in 2020, the marriage fractured in one more direction. According to testimony at trial, Kouri began an affair with a man named Robert Josh Grossman. Grossman was a military veteran who had served during the Iraq War. He and Kouri had worked together flipping houses. They built something beyond a business relationship, and Kouri, by her own words, had started imagining a different future. She sent him text messages that investigators would later recover, and the prosecutors would read aloud in a Utah courtroom 4 years later. 2 weeks before Eric's death, Kouri wrote to Grossman, "I do want a future together. I do want you. Figure life out together. And then, if he could just go away and you could just be here, life would be so perfect. I love you." That phrase, "if he could just go away," became one of the most repeated lines of this entire case. The defense of 2022. Investigators say Kouri began reaching out to a contact. She told this contact she was looking for hydrocodone pills, describing them as being for an investor. But then the request escalated. She told this contact she wanted something stronger, and she used a phrase that became significant in the investigation. She called it the Michael Jackson stuff, a crude reference to propofol, the anesthetic involved in Michael Jackson's 2009 death. She was not asking for propofol specifically. Kouri's device showed contact with her drug source multiple times in January of 2022. And more critically, investigators found that Kouri had deleted data from her phone. Data spanning from January 2nd, 2022 through shortly after Eric's death. She deleted months of messages, months that covered exactly the period in which prosecutors say she was planning what happened next. And then there were the search queries found on that same phone. What is on the death certificate as? That is not the search of someone processing grief. That is not a question a person asks by accident. That is a search a person runs when they are actively thinking about poison, specifically about what happens afterward, about what the paperwork looks like, about whether anyone will know. Those searches were sitting in Kouri Richins' phone. They were read aloud to a jury. If you are following this case with us, hit subscribe right now. We cover cases like this every week, and we always go deeper than the headlines. By February of 2022, Eric Richins had been living with a fear he had started naming out loud. He told his family. He told friends. He said words that at the time may have seemed too dark to take literally. If I die, look at her. He said that. He said it more than once. He had been in a deteriorating marriage for years, had taken legal steps, had 17 days. The judge at sentencing put it in exact terms. Kouri Richins had attempted to murder her husband on Valentine's Day, failed, and then spent the next 17 days not changing course, not pausing, preparing to try again. Prosecutors allege she contacted her source again on February 26th, 12 days after the failed first attempt, and paid $900. She went to sleep in the child's room around 9:30 in the evening. She told investigators she simply fell asleep there. She was a mother looking after her boy. That was her account. At 3:22 in the morning, on March 4th, 2022, Kouri Richins placed an emergency call to law enforcement. She said she had woken up, returned to the master bedroom, and found Eric cold at the foot. The prosecutor, Brad Bowthorpe, told the jury plainly what he believed they were hearing in that call. He said it was not the sound of a wife becoming a widow. He called it the sound of a wife becoming a black widow. The autopsy results left no room for interpretation. Eric Richins, 39 years old, father of 3, had died of fentanyl intoxication, taken orally. The amount of fentanyl found in his system was not a trace. It was not explainable by recreational use. It was not consistent with any known prescription. The medical examiner determined it was approximately 5 times the lethal dosage. 5 times. Eric had no history of illicit drug use, no prescription for any controlled substance, no signs of heart disease, no stroke, no natural cause of death of any kind, just a catastrophic concentration of synthetic opioid in his blood, placed there by something he consumed. The only question left was who put it there. Kouri Richins did not go quiet after Eric died. She did not retreat from public life. She did not grieve privately. In March of 2023, exactly February 2026, 4 years after Eric's death, the trial began in Summit County, Utah. It lasted 3 weeks, 13 days of testimony, more than 40 witnesses for the prosecution. The defense rested its case without calling a single witness, not one. Kouri Richins waived her right to testify. She sat at the defense table and said nothing while prosecutors laid out the case piece by piece. Layer by layer, the prosecution built it. The financial motive, the insurance policies, the debt, the imploding business, the affair. Josh Grossman took the stand, visibly emotional, as his text messages with Kouri were displayed on screen. The message about wanting Eric to just go away. The message about how perfect life would be. Grossman also testified about something that happened roughly 2 weeks after Eric's death. Kouri had asked him a question. She asked how it felt to kill someone. He had served in Iraq. She framed it as curiosity. At the time, he said, he did not read much into it. The jury read a great deal into it. The drug acquisition, Loba's testimony, the phone records, the deleted data, the Google searches, and then the letter. After her arrest, investigators found a 6-page handwritten letter in Kouri's jail cell, addressed to her brother. In it, she asked him to tell investigators that Eric had been buying drugs from Mexico. All counts: aggravated murder, attempted aggravated murder, 2 counts of fraudulent insurance applications, forgery, unanimous on everything. Eric's family embraced in that courtroom. May 13th, 2026. Eric Richins would have turned 44 years old that day. His sister, Kouri Richins, stood before the court and said exactly that. She stood there because her brother could not. And then she told the judge what had happened to those 3 boys in the 4 years since their father was killed. Kouri, in the months following Eric's death, had cut the children off from Eric's family entirely. She withheld access to their grandfather. She used the boys as leverage in disputes over Eric's estate. And she had spent that time filling their heads with false narratives about Eric's family, stories that were not true. So when Child Protective Services took custody of the boys after Kouri's arrest and asked the children where they wanted to go, those boys said they were afraid of Eric's family, not because of anything that family had done, because of what they had been told. Each of the 3 boys submitted an impact statement. They were read by counselors because the boys did not want to speak in front of their mother. One son, identified in court as AR, said he would not feel safe if she were ever free. Another accused Kouri of causing the deaths of his pets. And then, the detail that stopped the courtroom, he said he believed Kouri may have tried to poison him as well, that she had caused him to have a seizure. These boys are not a sidebar to this case. They are at the center of it. They lost their father. Then they spent years in the care of the woman convicted of killing him. Kouri spoke for approximately 30 minutes before sentencing, mostly addressing her sons. She said she knew they did not want to hear from her. She said she understood if they hated her. She said she would be waiting when they were ready. And then she said, "Murder? No, absolutely not. I will not accept that. I will not be blamed for something I did not do." Her attorneys announced an appeal. Judge Judge Morazzini looked out at the courtroom and said the words that now end this case. A person convicted of those things is simply too dangerous to ever be free. Accordingly, Kouri Richins, life without the possibility of parole. 4 consecutive sentences on the remaining counts. She will not walk out of a prison. Eric Richins knew. He said the words. He named her. He told his family. He told his friends. He told anyone who would listen. And then he stayed because he loved 3 small boys and could not bring himself to be the one who destroyed what little stability they had left. He made a drink. He got into bed. And he trusted, one last time, the woman who handed it to him. Somewhere out there is a children's book about an angel dad. A little boy who... Drop your thoughts in the comments. What do you think really happened? We read every single one.